Here we are in St George's Gardens, and this quiet backwater witnessed the closing scenes of one of the most remarkable passages in British history. The story begins on the 25th of July 1745 when Prince Charles Edward of the exiled royal family of Stuart landed on the western coast of Scotland with a handful of followers. Gathering support in the Highlands, he captured Edinburgh and defeated the British forces in Scotland at Preston Bands. Now reinforced from the Scottish lowlands, he advanced through northwest England and on to Derby, 120 odd miles from London, throwing the supporters of the reigning Hanoverian regime into consternation. Dissension in the Jacobite High Command caused Prince Charles to turn back north from Derby on the 6th of December. After a final run of successes in Scotland, the Jacobite army was brought to battle and defeated at Culloden on the 16th of April 1746 by the Duke of Cumberland, who was the second son of King George II. The retribution was savage and long drawn out and left a permanent imprint on the Highlands. However, the trials and executions of some of the more difficult prisoners were staged in London, chose for the sake of the public spectacle and as a safeguard against disorders and rescue attempts on the part of the Jacobite supporters in the North Country. 3 of the Jacobite lords were allowed the comparative mercy of beheading on Tower Hill. The gentry and commoners were not so much executed as done to death, as stipulated in a law of 1381, whereby the convicted men were hanged until nearly dead, then laid out and butchered alive. Defiant to the last, 17 men were killed on Kennington Common in the course of July, August and November 1746. Francis Townley, the colonel of the Manchester Regiment, was buried in the yard of Old St Pancras Church. The dismembered remains of the others were thrown into unmarked pits in the St George's burial grounds, opened in what was then open country to serve 2 parishes in the north of London. In the course of time, these became the present St George's Gardens. Ironically, they are sited a little more than a stone's throw from the Foundling Museum, which shows the benevolent face of Hanoverian culture. Altogether, 16 men were buried here, and the names indicate just how widespread the support for Prince Charles actually was. There was a single representative of the great clan families of the Western Highlands, namely Donald MacDonald. He is outnumbered by Lowlanders. I'm going to read you the names of the men who were buried here. The men of the Manchester Regiment who were captured at Carlisle, 9 men. John Berwick, Lieutenant. Andrew Blood, officer, gentleman farmer he was. Thomas Deacon, Lieutenant of the Manchester Regiment. George Fletcher, Captain, Manchester Regiment. David Morgan, Captain, Manchester Regiment. Thomas Chadwick, Captain of the Manchester Regiment. James Dawson, Ensign of the Manchester Regiment. Thomas Siddle, Manchester Regiment. James Bradshaw, also of the Manchester Regiment. And of the Scots, we have John Hamilton of Sandston, who was the Jacobite Governor of Carlisle and captured at Carlisle. We have Donald MacDonald, just mentioned him, captain in the MacDonald of Keppoch Regiment. Sir John Wedderburn of Blackness, who was the receiver of excise for the Jacobites. He was in Ogilvy's regiment and also in Elco's Life Guards. Andrew Wood, who was a captain in John Roy Stewart's regiment. Walter Ogilvy was a lieutenant in Perth's regiment. Alexander Leith, who was a captain in Glen Bucket's regiment, and James Nicholson, who was a lieutenant in Perth's regiment. And as I said, Colonel Francis Townley, the commander of the Manchester Regiment of Townley Hall in Lancashire, was buried in the graveyard of Old St Pancras Church. He was executed on the 30th of July 1746. So, that is more or less the story. So if you'd like to play for us, Roddy, that'd be great.
Okay, in remembrance of the named persons, I'll play the ground of the pibroch Lament for Donald of Laggan.